Hello everybody and welcome to this week's devlog video for Eaten by Wolves. This week has been a fairly hectic week for me, all things being said. I've had an exam with uni already. I've got another one coming up in a couple of days. So there's been a lot of just revising, just preparing for the exams. Unfortunately, this is just how it is during exam season. I have been trying to get as much work done on the game as possible. Honestly, I do this in my free time, and I do find it a little bit cathartic, so there has been a fair amount of just doing this to keep my mind off of going crazy on calculus. This week I've made a few changes to the game. I'm going to run through what they are in a few minutes. I'm going to outline the changes I hope to make by next week, and I thought we could have a little talk about the long-term plans for the game. So far this week I've put in a few features. The first one is I've changed out almost all the models for the trees. So you can see here we now have these really tall, sort of sinister even a little bit, pine trees going above us with these thick branches. We've got another one with thin branches. And these little birch trees just dotted around. And this is just me playing with the scale of the game and playing with the types of art that I've added in. Honestly, I quite like these trees. I might try and find a middle ground between what we had before, which was fairly short, and what we've got here, which is these sort of monolithic, slightly terrifying, can't see them if you look straight up sort of trees. But all that's going to be a little bit of tweaking. The new art does make the game feel a little bit more interesting. Secondly, you can see I'm playing from a first person perspective rather than my usual third person. And this is just because I thought it would be interesting to try it out. It was only a few lines of code, all things being said, and honestly I actually think it makes the game a lot more engaging, a lot more interesting, and even though all you can really do at the moment is pick up these sticks and bring them to the fire, I'm not getting immensely bored as I'm doing this video, just because it kind of feels like I am actually picking them up. It's a shame that they have to slide across the surface though, but that's all things for later devlogs. One new thing I have put into the game so far is I've put in a glow system when we interact with objects. So I turned it off just then, I've turned it back on here, and you can see what this does is when my mouse is over an object, it gives it a little white outline. Whilst I'm carrying an object, it turns it green. If I try and put the object back down in the middle of something, it'll give me this red can't put it down texture, and if I try it'll get mad at me. And of course the fire just eats it when I put it too close to the fire. This isn't actually a feature that I want to go into the game as it stands, but rather something that I like having to call. It means I can do things like make the tent interact with, and make it obvious when you're doing that. That's about it for the developments I've made this week. The only last thing is you can see the terrain here now has a gradient, where before we had sort of a white, clear, empty wasteland. We now have a gradient of terrains. Close to the water you can see it's a little bit brown, a little bit muddy grey. As we go a little higher up it gets green, and higher than that we can hit this sort of white snowy texture. I need to fiddle with the values a little bit more for this, just because at the moment there's not much green. It all feels a little bit too close together, and it's just being passed values for height. In future I want to expand this so we can pass in values for say how cold a terrain tile is, for how much vegetation grows there. That'll affect the number of trees, the number of bushes for instance, and all sorts of things that are going to make the world and going to make it an interesting experience to walk around the world, so we're not just faced with the sort of same old of randomly spotted down trees, weird bushes in the middle of nowhere, rocks from nothing. Just want to make the game a little bit more fun to explore. Really part of the game is going to be exploration based. It's why I wanted to make a fully procedurally generated world. and all of that will come in later updates. What I need to do for next week is, I've had some problem with the lighting engine. It's to do with the way that I calculate the normals for the terrain, so I need to hop in there and fix that. The shadow maps too, it becomes a little bit more obvious as the sun goes down here, but at present the only way I cast shadows is from a single light perspective, and in this case that's the sun. But for half the game the sun isn't even around, and I never wanted the sun to be a particularly large part of the game anyway. So I'd like to be able to have the fire here cast little flickery shadows and all the things around it, and I'm going to hop in and make that happen. If I get a chance to, I have been meaning to, like I've said for the last 2 devlogs, fix my animation engine. And when I say fix, I mean there's some pretty obvious holes in it, and I want to put in equip slots, and to do that is going to require a little bit of a rewrite of a lot of the code for how I handle models. So I'm honestly dreading that a little bit. If I get it down though, I can have characters equip the sticks, I can have a plethora of new ideas in there, as well as start adding in fun entities to interact with. I'd quite like to have some animals in the world. We'll start off simple. I'm thinking of putting in, say, just squirrels that run away if you get too close, but populating the world. At present it feels a little bit too dry. That's hopefully going to come in by next week, although it's actually a bit of an undertaking for me, so that might get bumped off until I have more free time and the want to sit down and do about 8 solid hours of coding. Aside from that, I wanted to improve the way that my mouse picking works. So at present, if I try and find a stick, you'll see instead of it being very clean and obvious when I hover over the stick, it flashes a little bit, it takes some time to pick it up, it's not massively intuitive. You see it picks up when I'm not hovering over, when I am hovering over it doesn't, and that's because I sort of threw the mouse picker together in about 20 minutes. So I'm going to have to go back and rewrite a lot of that code, so it's more accurate and a better fit. So those are my plans for next week, what I've done this week. We may see some more graphical changes too, hopefully. They have been quite fun to add in. So I was going to take a sit down here, just next to the fire, whilst it's dark, and have a talk about the future of the game. So far I've not really gone over what my long-term plans are, or even outlined what the idea for the game is. That's because it's been fairly clear in my head what I'm working towards, but all you're really seeing is the blank canvas that I'm spilling my ideas onto. Essentially I'm looking to make just a survival game, the kind of game that I like to play, roughing it against the odds, but with a focus on things feeling more real. Not necessarily realistic. I still quite like my low poly art style, not least because I'm not too good at drawing high poly, but also because I think it makes the game have a certain aesthetic that appeals to me. But when I say real, I mean I'm hoping to scrap the inventory system altogether. I'm hoping to make it so real survival techniques do actually help you in your playing of the game. And real in the sense of you feel like you actually are out in the wild whilst you're playing it. Working towards this is putting in the things that I'm putting in, so aspects that take out some of your suspension of disbelief, make you feel like you're actually in there, and features that will make the gameplay more gameplay, so letting you hunt for your own food, trap the squirrels that are running away from you, have to keep your fire lit because lighting fires is actually a pain in the arse. And a lot of this harkens back to my days as a young kid, where I'd spend time in these survival settings. I used to be a member of the Boy Scouts, and I used to absolutely love setting up tents, building fires. And this just takes it one step further, living in the actual roughing wilderness, or as close as I can get, while still having cute little fires that bob up and down. So that outlines my ideas for the game. I've shown you what we've done so far and my plans for next week. That's more or less it for this devlog. Thank you very much for watching. Again, if you've been watching my collision detection series, thank you very much. I hope it's been helpful, although I appreciate it might not be the most entertaining video series on the internet. But that covers it for this devlog. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any comments, questions or suggestions for me, do please pop them in the comments section down below. Honestly, I appreciate any interaction at this point. It's all so welcome, it all makes me feel really good, and it's part of what brings me back to making these videos at all. Till next time, I will see you next week. Goodbye now.